For years, we've been filling out risk assessment forms, and we've become really good at it. But after listening to the root causes for the majority of our serious incidents, it's become evident that although we know how to fill out the form, we may not know exactly why or when to complete a risk assessment. This is because of our risk tolerance. So what is risk tolerance? Risk tolerance is an individual or group's decision to accept a certain level of risk. Now, there are three parts when we talk about risk. First is hazard recognition. This is when an employee is able to visually see a hazard in the workplace, such as a slip and fall hazard on the plant yard or an unguarded pinch point. The second part is the worker's understanding of why that is a hazard. Understanding that the surface is slippery could in fact be a slip and fall hazard, or the unguarded pinch point could result in a very serious incident. The third part when we're managing risk is the risk tolerance. So an employee sees the hazard, he understands it, and the risk tolerance is the decision that they make once they have that information. At Oldcastle, this is the heart of when I see something, I will stop and do something. It's not just about seeing the hazard. It's also about making the decision to do something to reduce the risk associated with that hazard. Sometimes the decision is the one we're looking for, such as when an employee does not continue with the work until the hazard is removed. Other times the employee may say, I understand that this is a hazard, but I'm going to go ahead with the job anyway. Now that's risk tolerance. In the past, we believed that hazard recognition and risk tolerance may have been one and the same or the same concept. But what we're learning today is that just because a worker recognizes the hazard does not mean he or she will make the right decision about the risk. The term, when I see something, also means we must recognize and understand the hazard, which then should drive the action to stop and do something. Where I saw this very distinct difference between hazard recognition and risk tolerance was after listening to a story from one of my safety colleagues at another multinational company. He very much enjoyed being in the outdoors, and in this case, skiing in the mountains. To reduce his own personal level of risk tolerance, he made the decision that he should get some training to better understand snow conditions in the mountains. So he went to a very reputable educational institute and received 2 days of avalanche safety training. During the training, the group of 14, including the instructor, went out to a mountain in the Canadian Rockies and actually began applying what they had learned in the classroom on the edge of that mountain. They looked at snow conditions, at the angle of the slopes, and all the other information associated with the hazards. And the slope that they were looking at and assessing was ready to slide and start an avalanche. The instructor asked the class, how many people believe this slope is ready to avalanche? 14 out of 14 people agreed that this was a dangerous slope and was ready to avalanche at any minute. Now that's 100% perfect hazard recognition. Then the instructor asked the question, how many of you are prepared to ski this slope anyway? 12 out of 14 people put up their hands. 12 of the 14 people who had perfect hazard recognition made a decision that they were prepared to accept the risk. Well, hearing that story was an epiphany for me on this idea of the difference between hazard recognition and risk tolerance, whether it's on the mountain or in our workplace. Just because our employees have been trained on how to recognize hazards does not mean they will make the right decision when it comes to risk tolerance. When we first look at risk tolerance and the 10 influencing factors that we're going to discuss later, it may appear too big or we may not know where to start. However, the good news is that the tools we need to address risk tolerance already exist within the Oldcastle Materials Safety Toolbox. Risk assessment tools such as TRACK, THINK, Take 5, SAFE, Risk That Kill, or Game Tape, and even the safety leadership teams are some of the tools we use to address risk tolerance. These tools are simple and can be used in the workplace or at home. The job safety analysis is also a tool where we can have discussions about risk tolerance and taking action to reduce the risk in that particular task, that job, or that day's activity. Our behavior observations are an opportunity every day on our work sites for a supervisor or a peer to have a discussion with someone else on the work site about the risk we take and how we can reduce those risks. Safety conversations can change organizations, and it's these simple tools is what's going to help us have those conversations and minimize the risk in our jobs. Let's take a look at the training we do in the workplace. We give people a safety manual or a set of policies and procedures, and we discuss regulations and give them standards to follow. Just like we discussed in the avalanche training example, we tell them all kinds of scary stories, how people get hurt, and here's how they've had injuries. And look, we even have a risk matrix that has calculated the risk reduction. We think that's going to resolve risk tolerance? No, not quite. But we also do employee safety perception surveys in the workplace, and we ask questions like, do the employees understand the hazards of the jobs they perform? And in Oldcastle, 92% of the employees say, yeah, we understand that. Or did you receive adequate safety training? Again, 92% all say yes. Or do you take action when you see hazards in the workplace? 99% of our employees say yes. So the hazard recognition part is fairly good. Our employees, they do understand it. I also know our employees understand risk from some real life experiences or incidents. So let's take a look at a real life incident. Take a look at this picture. What the JSA or job safety analysis said about the job is the hazard of the job is the hammer could bounce off the counterweight and strike the person's hand who's holding the wrench. Perfect hazard recognition. Do you know what the incident investigation said? Quote, as I swung the hammer, it bounced off the counterweight and hit the hand of the person holding the hammer wrench. We knew it was going to happen. Our safety advisor, who talked to the workers during the investigation, said to the worker who was holding the hammer wrench, he said, well, do you think that was a good idea? And while the employee was holding his hurt hand, the worker said, well, not now. It's perfect hazard recognition. What do you think the JSA said for the mitigating action? It said, be careful. Be careful. Is being careful a mitigating action? Is being careful a way of reducing risk tolerance on our work sites? I don't think so. Let's take a look at another example. Many of you are familiar with a scenario like this. It's a seemingly quick and easy repair. It's needed at height, and there's two options for accessing the area that needs to be repaired. In this case, a ladder is available along with a man lift. Now, this is where risk tolerance plays a major role in influencing how employees complete their job safely. The man lift is clearly the option with the least amount of risk for completing this job. However, using the ladder is clearly quicker and easier. Because so many employees have used ladders without an incident, risk tolerance kicks in and overrides the decision to make the better choice to put on a fall protection harness, walk across the yard to get the man lift, do an inspection of the man lift, move it into position to make the necessary repair, and then put the man lift back and replace the harness back in the PPE locker in the control house after the task is completed. Why? Well, the why is summarized in the 10 influencing factors that we will cover in the upcoming risk tolerance training modules. These factors, once realized and then countered, will improve our ability to effectively see something and then stop and do something. Now, I'm going to review the 10 factors that influence risk tolerance very briefly because they'll be covered later in detail. So here are the 10 factors that affect risk tolerance and affect our decisions that we make regarding risk of the job or task. See if these sound familiar to you. The first one, overestimating our capability or experience. A belief that one's physical ability, strength, or agility, or years of experience and wisdom will allow them to do the task without injury. The second is familiarity with the task. This is our self-confidence, especially when accompanied by being unaware of actual dangers or deficiencies. The third, seriousness of the outcome, asking the question, how bad could it be? When we believe that the outcome of our actions will not be serious, we're prepared to accept more risk. If we believe the outcome to be serious and risky, our risk tolerance goes down. Number four, voluntary actions and being in control. This is the view that When I'm in charge and not dependent on others, the risk is a lot lower. Number 5 is personal experience with an outcome. This means not having a personal experience that had a bad outcome can raise the level of risk that we accept. Number 6 is the cost of non-compliance. When there's a high cost or penalty for not complying, with the performing the predetermined standard, a person may be more reluctant to take a risk. Or the opposite is also true. And number 7, overly confident in the equipment. And this is excessive trust that the equipment will always perform as designed and will never fail. Number 8, confidence in the protection and the rescue. Again, this is believing that our safety equipment will protect us, or the rescue will be immediate if we do get in trouble, so the acceptance of risk is increased. Number 9 is potential profit and gain from our action. This is believing that a person or a corporation will accept a higher level of risk if there's a substantial profit or personal gain for the risk action. Last but not least, number 10, role models accepting risk. And this is the level of risk accepted by our role models and mentors will impact our own level of risk acceptance. So this is simple yet an effective process that will help us make better decisions when it comes to performing our next task safely, whether it be at work or at home. Risk tolerance does not mean that we're accepting the risk as it is, but rather understanding that it's human nature to overlook risk based on these 10 factors. So with the knowledge, we can make better decisions to reduce and or eliminate the risk. I want to thank some of your peers within Oldcastle Materials family who are instrumental in helping make this information logical and applicable for our different lines of business. And here they are. Let's learn more about this together, not only for ourselves and our coworkers, but also for those waiting for us at home. Remember, our number one guiding principle is let's make safety our family business. Thank you.